Alright, welcome back once again. We're still on the preview train because I wanted to talk about the stuff that the Mechanicum got for the Horus Heresy. Not necessarily just because they are Horus Heresy, or because they're new, but because I think Games Workshop has actually done something kind of interesting here, because they've got something that ties across two systems. The Skitarii. And so they've done Skitarii for something that isn't 40k, but they've still managed to make them kind of unique, and that's impressive, and I want to go over why that's cool. But before we get into that, this video is sponsored by Golden Dragon Games and their new game Marcher Empires at War, which is currently on GameFound. Marcher Empires at War is an alternate history combined arms 28mm tabletop wargame. You may well have seen me mention Golden Dragon Games on the channel before. They make some amazing tank-based STLs, which previously I've called out as being excellent for use as proxies, but now they have Marcher Empires at War, their very own wargame. Marcher features a D10 based system, alternating activations, buildable and destroyable terrain, free rules forever, and a 2-player starter set made in hard plastic, just to name a few things. The 2-player starter set, Battle of the Marne, contains everything you need to play Marcher. 2 hardcover rulebooks, a set of 10-sided dice by Baron of Dice, a token sheet, the Engineer's blueprints, and the Battle of the Marne missions and lore packet, along with 82 plastic miniatures made by Wargames Atlantic, and all of that for $200. But Golden Dragon Games got their start with STLs, so as they say themselves, if you've got an internet connection and a 3D printer, you can play Marcher. You can find the GameFound campaign for Marcher Empires at War First Edition using the link in the description or in the pinned comment down below. Thank you very much to Golden Dragon Games for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to it. Alright, look, we know what the Skitarii look like, right? We know that. We know that they look like this. They are a very distinctive unit and they look very interesting. The combination of robotic parts along with those long trench coats is really fun, and the hoods especially add something a little bit different. Of course, them being AdMech, there's a bunch of weird Baroque ornamentation going on with the weapons, which is class. They are, I think, a very distinctive group. When they're put down on the tabletop, I think it's fair to say that you can't really confuse them with anything else. They've got a very clear identity as to what they are, and of course they are very heavily associated with 40k, because when you look at the Horus Heresy side of things, really up until this point we've only had servitor looking lads, at least filling that similar role in terms of your general purpose infantry. And the thing is, Games Workshop has done kind of interesting stuff with the Skitarii in 40k before, but it's not always gone well, like this guy. I mean, I just don't know what to say about this anymore. I can't even remember whether I liked it when it first came out, but I definitely don't like it now. The more I've seen this model, the less I've liked it, and the sillier it's become. And don't get me wrong, I like a bit of silly in my 40k. I'm of the opinion that 40k is at its peak when it is grim and dark, and also a little bit daft. A little bit of sprinkling of daft over the top of it. That's my sort of setting, you know? This isn't really a sprinkling of daft, this is just mad. And even by the weird logic of 40k, I don't really understand how it's supposed to work. Yes, being able to shoot people from higher up is definitely a strength, but why is he that high up, and why aren't they, I don't know, extendo legs? Are they extendo legs? That might make this more reasonable. No, there's no physical possible way they could be. It's just a bit off. It's a bit weird. It doesn't necessarily look that great, and there's a reason it's become somewhat memed on ever since this model was revealed and then released. The thing is, these are so well known and so recognisable, how do you take them and then put them into Horus Heresy without there being something of a crossover, without them having their toes stepped on, without, like, making it so that the two things from those two systems become interchangeable? Well, you do this. You kind of make the same thing again, but not really. See, these are Skitarii, these are the Battle-Pilgryms, and they are recognisably similar in some respects to the Skitarii Rangers and Vanguard, but they are also significantly different in multiple ways. Firstly, those legs. Those chunky, glorious, long robot legs. This is such a better implementation of making tall and lanky infantry. Like, the difference between this and this is absolutely insane. This looks so much better, I can't even really put it into words. For a start, it looks a lot more graceful and elegant, which you could say is maybe not what the Mechanicus is about, but the Mechanicus does have some stuff that is not dissimilar in terms of how purposeful it is without it looking like someone's walking on stilts. These flow very, very nicely. They've got a really nice silhouette to them. They still have the recognisable thing of, overtly mechanical in multiple ways. Admittedly less so than the 40k ones. You can see more organic parts here than you can on these Skitarii Rangers. I mean, quite a few more organic parts are visible on these. They have a more kind of distinct and human-looking torso for a start. It could just be that with the Skitarii Rangers and Vanguard, there's just more covering going on. But these read as slightly more organic for whatever reason, even considering the fact that they have had these really cool legs grafted on. The helmets look fantastic. Again, they look a little bit more refined than the ones you find on the Rangers and the Vanguard from 40k, but it works super well to distinguish them while still having a similar overall silhouette, right? You can see the continuation. That's the thing that I find really fun about stuff like this. When they do those crossover units, or those ones that one is inspired by the other or is a development of the other, or even potentially a devolution of something else, when they do it well, they do it really well, and I think this is an instance of them doing it really well. The weapons look fantastic. I really like that you've still got a bit of that kind of Baroque ornamentation going on. That's very cool. The high collars look great, but the fact you've still got these long cloaks, it really ties them in with what would come later. The overall vibe I get from these are like Ranger-esque warriors. They look as though they can run or walk for days on end without a break. The tattered cloaks really have a sort of nomadic feel to them, which is very, very fun. The weapons, again, they look super ornamental, but it's still Mechanicum. It's still ad mech, so to speak, so you know that they're going to be a bit mad. I really like that there's a sort of common augment going on here as well, where they have arms replaced with mechanical ones, so you've got prosthetics on the arms, and for a lot of them it seems to be on that right side. Now, I'm not sure whether that is a case of it's that arm because that is what they're bracing against when the gun is fired. If that's the case, that's a very cool little feature. I did notice that one of them has the prosthetic on the other hand, which is the hand that's holding the power sword. Now, if that is the intention, that the prosthetic is there to provide additional strength, so for those with, long-range weapons, it's to brace the stock against when they're firing, whereas for that one, it is for extra strength when swinging a melee weapon. That is very, very cool. It's just a very fun feature. Even things like the chests, where you've got all the cables running into these almost respirator things, especially around the collar, and then you've got that readout. They're a little bit different on each. Just a little bit, but the difference is there. I have to admit, I quite like the bare heads for these as well. That's kind of unique for me. I generally prefer the helmets. Well, no, I prefer the helmets on these, but the bare heads do look good because they look a bit grim, a bit horrible, and they do have that same level of, stuff's been messed with. There's been a fair amount of replacement of biological material with, obviously, sacred machinery, which is just always fun. I just like these a lot. I think they've done a really good job of making something that feels like a precursor, or something that is equivalent to what we see in 40k, but it still has its own unique, distinct personality. You can see the relation between this unit and this unit, but they're not the same. They might have the same name, they might both start with Skitarii, but there is a distinct difference in the presentation. And I hate to say it, I think these actually look better than what the Skitarii look like in 40k. I'm sorry, but I just do. I just think these look better. Now, something that is interesting is there's only 8 models showed off in this little carousel here. I wonder if it's 8 models to a box, because if so, that would make it a lot harder to, for instance, sub them in for your Skitarii Rangers or Vanguard. Now, if that's the case, that's a bit cheeky on their part, but I understand why they've done it, even if I wouldn't like it. Plus, I guess you would be modelling for disadvantage using these because they're way taller, but frankly, that is a punishment that I would be willing to take if it were me. As you can see here, we've got a few more heads, a few more bare heads, and yeah, pretty grim, pretty gruesome. got eyes replaced, bits of the skull ripped out. That guy is just missing a whole load of skin over the top of his head, so that's nice. They just look great. Absolutely fantastic. I think they've done a great job with them. The Marshal also looks brilliant. I really, really like the look of that unit. The pose is fantastic. The different variety of weapons available is very, very fun, and the servo skulls look great. Just as a side note, by the way, plastic Vultarax Stratos-automata. We've got it. It's here. I've walked past this thing in Forge World so many times. Like, in Warhammer World, where they got the Forge World shop, I've seen it in there, and I've thought to myself, God, that's just a pretty model. It's just so cool. And I've never bought one, because I don't have AdMech, and I definitely don't have Mechanicum, and so what's the point? But in plastic, it makes it so much more tempting, and that's just dangerous. Because look at it. It is just an excellent miniature, and now it's going to be cheaper and more easily available, and that is always a risk to the wallet, you know? Now, there is going to be a box with all of this in, so you get the Marshal and you get the Battle-Pilgryms, which, yeah, that does in fact confirm that there is going to be 8 per box, so summon them in for your Rangers or Vanguard might be a little bit difficult. I'm not surprised, just disappointed, but I just think they've done a great job. I think they've done a fantastic job, and they look similar but different, unique but enough like what we've seen before for there to be a direct lineage. Just good job all around, GW. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much to Marcher Empires at War by Golden Dragon Games for sponsoring this video. As I said before, check them out using the link in the description and the pinned comment. Check out the Game Found campaign. Let me know what you thought of that lot in the comments down below, and I'll see you for the next one.